Hey, everybody. I got my Biden-Harris t-shirt on because we can do that now. From the studio in the bonus room above the garage on the north side of Fort Bell, South Carolina, the shadow of Charlotte, the buckle of the Bible Belt, and the foot of Mount Belzoni, this is the York County Democratic Party YouTube show and podcast. We call it YCDP TV. All right, and here we are. Our punditry panel for a program that here's what I want to call this, guys. Let me know if you think this is okay. Primary education. Does that? I like that. That's not enigmatic enough? I like that. Okay.
It's a go for me.
Okay. So returning to the YCDP TV YouTube show and podcast over there to my, I don't know which side it is for me. It's camera over there is Nikita. Nikita, tell folks who you are.
Hello, everyone. I am Nikita L. Jackson. I am the current chair for the York County Democratic Party.
And right below me, I think this is your first time on the pod. Amber, tell people who you are.
Hello, my name is Amber Pearson-Bowen, and I am the third vice chair of the York County Democratic Party.
And kitty corner, down in the lower left corner, John Holder, tell people who you are.
I am John Holder, and I am one of York County's two representatives on the Executive Committee of the South Carolina State Democratic Executive Committee.
And I believe that you are our historical memory.
Well, I'm old, if that's what.
Well, you've also been hanging around the York County Democratic Party for a long time.
I started in York County Democratic politics when John Spratt first ran for Congress in 1982.
Yes.
Okay, so that's before Amber was born. And I'm not sure about Nikita.
No, I was here.
You were on the planet Earth in 1982.
Walking around, kicking up dirt.
All right. So we just finished our primary, the first in the nation primary. And my goal for this program is to talk to Democrats and a few stealth Republicans who are sneaking their way in here on the YouTube, because we know they watch. So we had the primary, and we'll talk about how it came together and what you guys think about it afterwards. And I got a short list of other things to talk about. But first, I want to play a little video just to show that, yes, people did pay attention all across the nation and even, in fact, across the world to this primary. So take a look at this.
This is the first time South Carolina is going first in the primary.
Mr. President, sorry, this is Jamie Harrison, DNC chair. I think a lot of stuff happened here in South Carolina today for you, sir.
What kind of turnout you have?
I always wonder about South Carolina, and maybe you can explain this to me. There's no party registration.
Tonight in South Carolina, President Biden is the winner of the Democratic Party's first official primary contest of this election year.
The Democrats moved South Carolina up in the primary calendar before Iowa and New Hampshire to appeal to a more diverse electorate.
South Carolina Democratic voters are heading to the polls today for the first in the nation primary, and our team of NBC News journalists covering that primary from cities across the state.
Democrats this weekend turning their attention to South Carolina, the first time that the state is getting to go first in the Democratic primary.
And we've got a lot to cover on Bourbon in the Back Room as that Republican nomination comes to South Carolina. Vincent.
What about the big giant Democratic primary that's occurring? No comments?
I know the date of the Republican primary, but for those our Democratic friends, please get out and vote for Joe Biden in the Democratic primary. All right, here we go, Vincent. Let's get back to the State House.
First in the nation. I mean, the Democrats moved the calendar just for this moment.
The first votes in the Democratic race for president were cast today in the South Carolina primary.
As expected, President Biden won Saturday's South Carolina Democratic presidential primary easily.
And tomorrow, Democrats are holding their official primary in South Carolina. Although President Biden is expected to win big, the state marks a key test for Democrats ahead of the general election.
We now want to turn to our political analyst who knows from top to bottom what the Democrats are doing.
We are now live on the air with breaking news for you on this Democratic primary day.
All eyes are on South Carolina.
Now, on Saturday, just this past Saturday, voters went to the polls in my home state of South Carolina for the first official Democratic primary, and President Joe Biden took 96% of the votes.
There was celebration as the results were confirmed.
mixed with the sense of relief that all the boxes in the Biden campaign were ticked. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, Columbia, South Carolina.
We got love from Al Jazeera. And you guys, when you were watching the Colbert, a little bit of applause, a little bit of love for South Carolina in his audience. So we got some attention out there. The guys at the Bourbon in the Back Room, I don't know if you noticed that. That's our local statewide political podcast. Pretty much Democrats, but they invite folks on from every place. It's like, yeah, we had a primary, next, moving on. But everybody else, they give us some love. Is that the kind of response around the country you guys were looking for?
Sounded good to me.
Yeah, I was very pleased. It put us on the map even larger than, what I expected, because even a lot of people around here was like, what does first in the nation mean? But, nationally, it was a big deal to have South Carolina first in the nation.
And I think seeing it on so many outlets also helped us reach some of those voters that might not have been able, we might not have been able to reach kind of locally through the means that we use for advertisement. So I think, all publicity is good publicity. So we thank you guys for the help.
And, it's been a while since a Democrat has won a statewide race in South Carolina, but this says South Carolina Democrats do exist, and we're out there and we vote.
What makes it important for South Carolina to be an early or first in the nation primary? What distinguishes us compared to Iowa and New Hampshire?
Well, Iowa was pulled out of first place for this year because in 2020, on caucus night, they had a catastrophic failure of their voting reporting system, and we weren't sure for a couple of days who had won the Iowa caucuses. And if you get that wrong, you are not staying at the top of the line. So it was agreed basically the day after the Iowa caucus 4 years ago that they would not be first again. So who goes first? Well, it did not hurt that the Democratic National Committee chair, Jamie Harrison, is from South Carolina. It did not hurt that South Carolina gave President Biden his first victory of the primary campaign 4 years ago. We have been early in the sequence for several years. We've been called first in the South, but we moved all the way up to the front of the line, leapfrogging New Hampshire this time. And it's important for a number of reasons. One is that we are the most diverse state in the early part of the calendar. Iowa, even when they can count the votes, is 98% white or something along those lines. New Hampshire is pretty close to that. So this is a chance for African-American voters to have their voices heard right up front. That's why it's important.
A statistic that I caught from this primary that I was not aware of and probably should have been is that South Carolina has a somewhat higher percentage of black people in just the general population makeup. But in terms of the Democratic Party, African Americans make up, 60% of the Democratic Party and fully 50% of this podcast. So we're not even fully representative here on this podcast. John, we need to replace you with or me. Yeah, let's replace me.
I'll go see if Barack Obama's available.
Yeah. What else is he doing? He's producing shows for Netflix right now, I guess. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things we were wondering about, we were concerned about, if we had a concern of all this, was going to be turnout. Everybody knew who was going to win. Everybody knew that we can do this now, right? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were going to win the primary. We can't endorse a candidate ahead of a primary, but afterwards, once they've won, we're all in for them.
That's right.
Yep. So everybody knew who was going to win. And with that in mind, people probably said, well, why bother going to vote?
And, we heard a lot of people say that, Gary, but just the mere fact of you being able to cast your vote, to let your voice be heard. And we also need to have those numbers just to show that, like John Holder said earlier, that Democrats do exist in South Carolina. And we did allow our voices to be heard on February the 3rd. And so it does matter so that you can that you're able to cast your vote to have your voice heard.
If we don't have very much turnout in one year, we may not be first next time. I mean, it's an ongoing battle. They shuffle the calendar for every election cycle, and this was the first year that they took Iowa and New Hampshire out of first place. So, if we want to stay first, we may have to fight for it next time. As a member of the state committee, I heard a lot about the negotiations and persuasion that went into the selection process. And, we're going to have to do that again in 4 years. And good turnout, even though this was a non-competitive primary, let's put it that way. Turnout shows that we deserve to be first in the future.
And I think along those lines, I know another thing that came up when people were trying to determine, I guess, why their vote should go into the Democratic primary was that they felt like if we knew that Biden was going to win, can we not cast our vote in the Republican primary to make sure that, he who shall not be named does not get that opportunity, right? And so I think it was important to educate the constituents and the people of South Carolina as to why it is important for us to make sure that our voice is heard in the Democratic primary. Those numbers help to go to making sure that the Democrats get everything they need as far when it comes to other elections, that make sure that it keeps our name in the pot and keeps us in the forefront of people's minds. When it comes time to doing this again in the next election. And it reminds me of Jamie Harrison when he came and spoke. He said, for South Carolina, as I breathe, I hope. Instead of it being as I breathe, I hope, it should be as I breathe, I vote. Because that is a right that, as you said, there's 60% African Americans that make up the Democratic Party in South Carolina. And that was a right that ancestors fought for. All right. And so even if not for anything else, we go out and we vote, we exercise that right. Our voice is our vote, because that is those are the shoulders of people that we stand on these days. Right. So even if you don't feel like your vote counts, because that is what they try to tell us, right? Your vote does matter. They wouldn't fight so hard to try to take it away if it didn't.
That's right.
Yeah. As I was putting together those news clips the other day, none of the people on those shows were talking about a poor turnout. Now, some of those were recorded before the primary and some were recorded afterwards. None of them were talking about a poor turnout, but did we have the kind of turnout we were looking for? Do anybody have numbers on how we did?
About 4%. I'm not sure what they were expecting. I know Iowa caucus turnout is usually about 2%. So we have as much justification as Iowa does to go first. Obviously, it would have been more if it had been a competitive primary. It was way down from the last election, Biden-Sanders, and the Clinton-Sanders election 8 years ago. But given a non-competitive primary, we did pretty well, I think.
I would say the same thing. In York County, we had 4,406 voters to come out and cast their votes in the primaries on February the 3rd. We had some of our precincts that were pretty much they're heavy voters in those areas, and so they did come out and they did cast their votes. So congratulations and thank you to those individuals that came out. We had one precinct that had 258 people to come out and vote, and close to 225 to come out and vote in another precinct. And so, York County, we did let our voice be heard. And we just got to continue to encourage. I even heard people coming in the door at the last minute saying, I just heard it, we had to vote, and I ran over here to come vote. So, I think getting the word out better, but we did a great job at getting the word out about the primary. So I'm going to say I was pleased with the voter turnout. Do I wish we could have had more? Of course I do. But we are grateful for the 4,406 individuals that came out to let their voice be heard on February the 3rd.
You guys mostly have a fair amount of hair left, even John. I apparently have been tearing mine out because I ran into a lot of people who it wasn't so much saying, it doesn't really matter why I go vote, Biden is going to win. What I kept hearing was, what primary? We have a primary. We're voting now. I thought we voted in November. How do we do better?
I'm going to say we did better. Every effort that we did to get people out to vote, we did our best in those efforts. We went to the local barbershops and hair salon. We went over to about 25 of those organizations in York County. We gave the information to the pastors of the churches for them to get out to their congregation. We did interviews on CN2. We did interviews on WRHI. And so there were interviews in the Herald. And I do know a lot of people don't have those outlets, but we flooded social media, as best that we could with the information. And in my opinion, what's going to take us to move the needle moving forward is we got to have these conversations, these ongoing conversations on a day-to-day basis when we encounter people, because a lot of people don't know. And that's because they're boggled down with every day-to-day life of taking care of their household. But in those small settings, those intimate settings that we are afforded to be in, we got to continue the conversations about what's going on with politics here locally, nationally, and on the state level.
That's the message for the people that be watching this show, because if you're watching this program and you're not the Republicans, you're probably here because you're pretty committed to activism, to being fairly active in the party. And I guess the idea is then is it takes all of us to keep moving that message out.
Yeah.
Because there's too many people out there that say, I don't want to know. I don't know, and I don't want to know. Then they're the ones that say, well, there's a primary today and I need to go vote. Who's running?
And a lot of people aren't used to voting on a Saturday.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I had a question that I was going to ask you when the last time I talked to you, Nikita, and I forgot to bring it up. The polls were closed on Sunday. In early voting. We had one Sunday in early voting. The Republicans will have a Sunday in early voting. What I kept hearing about for years was on Sunday in southern states, there would be something called Souls to the Polls, where preachers would encourage their congregates to go vote after their Sunday morning ceremony. Not having a Sunday early voting, is that a response to try to limit that kind of voting, or is it more benign?
Well, the Republicans can't vote on Sunday either. I mean, they're not going from their churches to the polls on Sunday.
In that effort, it was to encourage and increase the Black vote. And then too, from where I'm from, a lot of Black people take Sundays as being sacred. We're not doing too much on a Sunday except for service and serving and worshiping. And so I don't know how many people would have actually gone. I don't even know what the previous turnouts have been, even if that was the case. But I will say we shouldn't have to limit souls to the polls just on a Sunday either. We can have souls to the poll any day that there is an election and the precincts are open. So I'm going to say that let's not just limit souls to the poll on the Sunday. Let's do that every day. My charge was to have everyone take 15 people to the polls with you to go vote. That's souls to the poll, encouraging multiple people to go vote all at once.
So the primary was statewide, a total South Carolina event, but we had some specific things going on here in York County, and I'm thinking of our visit from second gentleman. He's the second gentleman, yeah. Doug Emhoff, Kamala Harris's husband, who came to visit in York County and talk to us down in Rock Hill, and also along with him was DNC Chair Jamie Harrison. Former South Carolina Democratic Party Chair Jamie Harrison. I got some pictures from that I want to take a look at. And while we do that, would you guys tell me, first of all, who we're looking at, who gets to go, and how does that play into our county politics? So we'll recognize this person.
I know her.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. So that was what the event looked like. It was at Counter, which is a restaurant in Rock Hill. You guys probably know more about Counter than I do, a little bit of their history.
Yeah, that's actually the Palmetto Room behind the Counter. Most people, if you know, in history, the counter played a significant role in the civil rights movement because of the Friendship Nine. And we were lucky to have David Williamson, who was one of the Friendship Nine, present at the event on this past Friday. He and 8 others went into the Woolworth building at that time and sat at the lunch counter to be served. And we know during that time period that Blacks couldn't eat at the counter. Blacks couldn't even enter the front of establishments during that time period. And they chose to take a stance on that day, which actually January the 31st was 63 years of the anniversary of the Friendship Nine sit-in at the Woolworth building. So yes, they played a very significant role in the location and us having it there, and just welcoming the first, second gentleman and the DNC chair.
63 years. So John and I were alive when that happened. I was like,
I wasn't, but
you're almost. Well, I was.
I think my mom might have been pregnant.
Okay, I was 10 years old.
Okay.
When Black people were being denied the right, the privilege to go into a public establishment and sit down and have lunch, I was alive. This means that it's not that long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. You know, it's a sad part of our history.
I'm old enough to have gone to a segregated public school, kindergarten.
Yeah, and I actually at the time I was in a suburb of Chicago. And I was in an integrated public school because in this school of 4,000 people, we had 1 Black teacher and his 2 Black children. It was an integrated school. Who is this?
That's Bishop Porterfield. Bishop Porterfield is the president of the Rock Hill branch of the NAACP.
And he gave an invocation, I think, at the event.
That is correct.
Okay, let's see who else we got.
State Rep John King.
And that's State Rep J.A. Moore out of Charleston, Berkeley County area.
Yes, and he gave a rousing talk. I mean, he brought the house down for a while.
That is Ms. Keisha Alexander. She spoke about student loan forgiveness from under the Biden-Harris administration.
Yeah, all right. She had a personal story to tell.
Yeah, I think Dolores Bowens is her name.
Yes, Bird Bowens. She spoke about veteran affairs. She had a personal story about receiving assistance as a veteran through the Biden-Harris administration. That's the man, 50 grand, Jamie Harrison, the national DNC chair. The other man, 50 grand. The first, second gentleman, Mr. Doug Emhoff.
The concept of second gentleman is still a little bit unusual to our as we speak about these things, because it's the first time we have had a female president or vice president. So,
now this is not really relevant to that, but one cool thing I like about their family, Doug Emhoff was married before and he has kids from his first marriage. The vice president is their stepmother, and they call her Mamala.
Mamala.
Yeah.
All right. And Nikita, you got to be like the master of ceremonies for this event. Have you been breathing the air in these elevated circles for a while now, or is this your first chance to do it?
Well, it's not my first chance. And for those who may not know, that I am former city council representative. I was city council member for Ward 5 here in the city of Rock Hill. So this isn't my first run of the mill. Back in 2020, when all the presidential candidates came through here, I did have the honor of introducing Senator Biden at the time. He was former VP. So I had the pleasure of introducing him, and had the opportunity to introduce Pete Buttigieg and Beto O'Rourke. And so I've been in the circle a little bit. But it never fails. I still get nervous every time.
You acquitted yourself very well. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I couldn't tell. If you were nervous, I couldn't tell from sitting there in the audience. I was nervous just sitting there in the audience. I don't get to see these people up close very often. I did work up a little bit of courage toward the end as people were doing the meet and greet and shaking hands and taking selfies and stuff with Doug and Jamie. And I went up to Jamie and I said, I want to ask you something a little bit weird. And I thought that was going to scare him away, and it didn't. I said, I do this York County Democratic Party YouTube show and podcast, and we're not getting a lot of traction yet. A lot of people don't know about us. We need some celebrity endorsement. Would you say who you are, and that when you're in York County, you get all your political news from the York County from YCDP TV. And I thought he was going to say, I can't do that. No, there's no way I can do that. He said, what was it? I said, YCDP TV. And he did this.
Hey folks, it's Jamie Harrison, DNC chair, former chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party. When I'm back in Rock Hill and I need to get the latest news, I get it all on YCDP TV.
Yeah, there's a lot of background noise, a little bit hard to see, but what a trooper.
Yeah.
So I thank you, Jamie. Appreciate it. And that's going to bring in thousands more people to watch the show. So what does an event like that do for us? There were, maybe 100 people there?
Yeah, it was about 100 people. We tried to get the word out as best that we could to encourage. We do know it was midday at the noon hour, and a lot of people were at work. But, with those type of events, we're really at the constraint of the guests that we have coming to our city and to our county. And so we really have to work around their schedule because they have other engagements that they have to be able. So we were just in line with some of the other events that they had to do that day. And take into consideration, the actual primary was the following day. So they had a lot of territory they had to cover.
What does it do for us? Having two high-power guys like that talk to 100 people is, I would venture to say, every one of those 100 people had either already voted or was guaranteed to vote that day or the next. So they weren't turning out the vote among those 100 people. They did get some TV coverage. There was Channel 9 was there and CN2 was there. So they got some TV coverage. But what does an event like that actually accomplish?
That we matter, that York County matters in this whole election process. And they thought enough of us to come here and spend some time with us to get our voters energized, revved up, and galvanized to go out and vote. So, York County has its place in these elections, locally, state, federally. We have a place. We are well known here throughout this whole election process, and they thought enough of us to come here just to energize our base of Democratic voters, to encourage them, their family members, their friends, their neighbors to go out and vote because it is important.
Okay, it would be great if they could speak in a stadium to 10,000 Democrats here in York County, but that's not possible. So they talk to as many people as they can, and they get some TV publicity. And then us telling everybody we know, yeah, I met Doug Emhoff. I met Jamie Harrison. It was pretty cool. I would like to look forward a little bit. We've concluded our primary, the Democratic primary. The Republican primary is coming up toward the end of this month. And Amber, you were talking about what I was kidding Nikita on the previous show was what I call strategic primary voting, where a Democrat might vote in the Republican primary, and Nikita, you were horrified. Basically, the idea was, don't do that. We really don't want you to do that. Well, now our primary is over, and theirs is coming up, and there may be some people out there who never quite got around to voting in the Democratic primary, but they are registered voters. It's too late to register for the Republican primary. They're registered voters. They're Democrats. They didn't vote. Now what do we say? These are the questions Nikita hopes I never ask.
And the three of us are looking at each other like,
who wants to tackle? Yeah, who wants to get themselves in deep doo-doo here in the party?
Every registered voter has the right to vote.
That's right. And you have conversation. One thing that I don't do, I don't engage in the conversations of, why, because people have their reasons for doing it. And like John stated, everybody has their right to vote for whoever they choose to. But it's a strategic move to pull Democratic voters away. And like John stated earlier, we need to have those numbers so that when it's time to come around this whole song and dance again, that we can say the reason why we need to be first in the nation is because Democrats do go out and vote. But if we have Democrats that's going out to vote in the Republican primary, that just takes away from our numbers that we need to have to support the reason behind the why.
But at this point, our primary is done. Nothing anybody can do about that. If you didn't vote in that, you had the opportunity to vote in the Republican primary. And
yes,
we're not going to recommend it. We're just going to say it's possible.
Exercise your conscience.
Yes, it's up to your conscience. We'll also mention that if you were to vote in this Republican primary, we've got another primary coming up in June we're going to talk about in a second. You are not obligated to vote in the Republican primary in June. If you vote in this Republican primary, even though we're not recommending it, and then when the June primary comes along, everybody's back together again. It's a big June wedding. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Green Party, whoever else is fielding a candidate for the offices that are going to be primary elected in June, you got your choice again. You walk up to your poll and you tell the poll worker which ballot you want to take. And you're not obligated to take a Democrat or Republican ballot, no matter what you did here in February. Okay, so that's coming up, the June primary. I've actually had somebody ask me if they vote in a primary, are you obligated to vote for that person in the November election? Which
not at all.
Yeah. I mean, I shake my head a little bit and say, that's a failure of civics. John, you've been a political science teacher for about 1,000 years. Nobody in one of your classes would ask that question.
If a student asked me that question, I'd say, how do they know who you voted for in the primary? I mean, how do they know? We have a secret ballot. I could vote in the Democratic primary in February or June, and then I could vote for a Republican in the general election. I mean, hypothetically speaking, nobody knows, and there's no way to tell. So don't worry about it.
Yep. So in other words, you're not obligated to vote for whoever you voted for in the primary. Should they win, you don't have to vote for them in the general election. You do not have to. Something that people probably don't realize, and something that's going to be important to the York County Democratic Party, is that when you take a ballot in a primary, we know which ballot you took. We know if you took a Democratic or Republican ballot. We don't know who you voted for in that primary, but we know which ballot you took. Why is that important?
If you vote in a Democratic primary, you're more than likely going to be a Democratic voter. So, when we do our voter outreach and we contact people to encourage them to vote or, early vote or get an absentee ballot or what, we know who to contact. We know that Democratic primary voters are generally people who are going to be sympathetic to our cause in the general election.
So they get something in the mail. They may get a phone call. We did some of that before this primary, right? There was some phone banking going on, trying to generate interest.
We did. There was phone banking. There was a text message that went out to everyone, emails that went out to all the registered Democrats here in York that we know of. And it was because of what John just stated, who we knew who to reach in contact.
When people move to South Carolina, like I did, they're surprised to discover that you do not register with a party when you register to vote. I lived in North Carolina for 30 years, and the first couple of years I registered as a Democrat. Then I realized I'm locked into, I'll admit, I'm locked into voting in the Democratic primary if I do that. So I re-registered as unaffiliated, and then I could vote in either primary. I still always voted in the Democratic primary, except once. One time. Okay. Yeah, yell at me if you want. One time I did that strategic voting. But down here, you don't register with a party. We noted that there was something on the Republicans' ballot that they're going to get for this primary that is asking Republicans to comment on the idea of registering as a registered voter with a party. they're asking their Republicans. We didn't get the answer to that question as Democrats. They're going to be asking their Republicans, should they press for that as a different way to register voters in South Carolina?
Well, those kinds of advisory questions are just publicity stunts. You know, we're going to put something on the ballot that we know people are going to support, just so when we've already made up our minds to introduce this in the General Assembly, but now we're going to claim a groundswell of popular support for it. So that's just kind of a political game.
Yeah. So it was a stunt.
Yeah. And the thing about party registration, now some states like North Carolina, where I was registered for 8 years, Gary, if you're unaffiliated, you can vote in either primary. But someplace like New York, if you're not registered with a party, you can't vote in the primary. So if we had party registration in South Carolina, and we had, for example, in York County, the last time we had more than one person on the ballot for sheriff, it was not in the general election in November, it was in the Republican primary. So if only Republicans can vote in the Republican primary for sheriff, and there's no Democratic candidate on the ballot in November, that means registered Democratic voters have no say in the election of the sheriff, which I don't think should be partisan anyway, but that's another story. People get disenfranchised by registration by party.
So you like the idea of keep it as it is.
I like it where it is, and let me put it this way: most of the people I know who support closed primaries in South Carolina are Republicans.
Okay, but as a party, then we're going to lose statistics on who might be a Democratic potential voter, but they haven't voted in a primary for a while.
Yeah,
we'll lose track of them.
I mean, we can make a lot of demographic assumptions. Campaigns can get access to a lot of consumer data, like people who own Subarus are more likely to be Democrats. I'm one of them. Gun owners are more likely to be Republicans. And they can market, even if they don't know who you voted for, which primary you voted for, they can make some pretty reliable assumptions based on your demographics.
Yeah. Here in 2024, the data broker business is alive and well, and they know more about us. You see it when you scroll down your Facebook page and you see ad after ad targeted at something you just bought. Or
thinking about buying.
Yeah, or they're tapped into your brain. It's that thing that Elon Musk is implanting in people's brains so that he can advertise to them. That's what it's all about, right? All right, so our primary is over. The Republican primary is coming up, but there's yet another primary in June. When I put together the stuff for the new website, I said our primary and election calendar is confusing here in South Carolina because we got Republican, Democratic primary on 2 different days, a third primary coming up in June, the actual election coming up in November. I thought we were special. I'm going to divert the attention from that for just a moment because our friends in Nevada are in the middle of their campaign week, and they have 2 primaries this week, and they're both for Republicans. Have you guys been paying attention to that? I thought it was cute, just noticing how complicated it is here. It's worse someplace else.
Of course.
Yeah. Who wants to explain to the audience what Nevada's doing this week? Our political scientist?
I don't know all of it, but I do know that they had their presidential preference primary, and Nevada has an interesting option called none of these candidates. So in any election where there are people listed on the ballot, if you don't like any of them, you can express your disgust by voting for none of these candidates. Now, sometimes none of these candidates actually comes in first. They don't win, but it's an effective way for people to express their dislike of some candidate, in this case, Nikki Haley, because she lost to none of these candidates in Nevada.
By a lot.
Presidential primary. Yeah. 2-1.
So they did, and it's not 2 primaries, actually. It's a primary that they held yesterday as they record this. And Donald Trump was not on the ballot in that primary. Nikki Haley was, and a few others, and then that, as you say, the none of these candidates, and none of these candidates came out way ahead. So people were going, don't want anybody. Coming up later this week, as we record this, they'll have a caucus. So it's not two primaries, it's a primary and a caucus. And Donald Trump is in the caucus and Nikki Haley is not. And the caucus is where all of the delegates to the Republican National Convention are going to come from. So Trump is going to get all those. So it was a publicity thing for Haley. I don't think she went out there. I don't think she did any campaigning out there. So maybe that's why she left. She's concentrating on the Republican primary here in South Carolina coming up February 24th.
And if she doesn't do well in the Republican primary in her home state,
yeah,
why is she going to hang in there?
Yeah, and we're expecting that she won't. The polling that we're seeing says even here, she's not going to do that well. I think I know why she's hanging in there, because something might happen to Trump sometime between now and Election Day, and she wants to be in the batter's box, in the on deck circle, just in case something knocks him out. So she has to keep taking the hits of losing to him over and over again, so that if he gets knocked out by one of the legal actions that's going on, or, he's got an old guy that eats too many Big Macs, something happens and the Republicans they're going to go scramble for their candidate. Well, that's not our business.
No, it's not.
We're these guys.
We can just sit on the sidelines and eat our popcorn.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot more. We'll do podcasts. There'll be a lot more to talk about as our June election comes up. Things are going to get quiet for the next few months, kind of go fallow. But let's take a look at what's going to happen in June at the offices and the candidates that have announced so far. And if you need a primer or a reminder of all that stuff, it's here on our website, the York County Democratic Party website, yorkscdems.org, or alternatively, ycdp.us or yorkcountydemocraticparty.org, however much you want to type in. And I'm going to go to this page that is called Meet the Candidates. There's the statement that the calendar is confusing. It's slowly becoming less confusing as primaries happen. And we can now say that for president and vice president, we have candidates that are locked in, so we can support Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. There won't be an election for governor this year, and not for U.S. senator. So those aren't there. But we will be, and every 2 years we elect our congressperson. So we're in the 5th district. The 5th district covers all of York County. One of the candidates who ran, the candidate who ran 2 years ago, Evangeline Hundley, has filed again. Now we're ahead of the primary, so we can't endorse her. There may be somebody else who will file as a Democrat, but nobody else has. Ralph Norman has filed to run for his office. Elizabeth Tedder has filed as an independent candidate. So that's coming up. There is one state Senate district that has a Democrat in it that covers some of York County. And Mike Fanning is the incumbent there, the Democratic incumbent. He's not filed yet, at least not last time I looked. But the filing date is April 1st, so he's got plenty of time. And then for State House, there are 2 State House districts that are of interest right now. The incumbent in District 49, which is a big part of York County, is John King. He's Democrat. Mm-hmm. He hasn't filed last time I looked, but probably will. And Matt Villardeau has announced, although he hasn't filed yet, but he's announced that he is going to run for District 26, which is over by here where I live in Fort Mill. Matt was the candidate last time, and he lost to
Ray Felder.
Yeah, Ray Felder. Yeah, thanks. Filling in for my stalled brain. Interestingly, Ray Felder has announced that she is not going to run again, which makes it an open seat. no incumbency. So Matt's going to run again. Interesting thing that I'm noticing here is we have two candidates who ran previously and lost. And something that I've noticed and I've heard talked about in my fairly short time living here in South Carolina is that often a Democrat will run for an office and not be successful because South Carolina, and that's the last we'll hear from them. They won't run again. Here we have two candidates that are running again for those offices, even though they lost last time. How important is that?
Well, I'm going to say hats off to anyone who decides to run. That's you got to be a very special individual to put your name on the ballot, because a lot of people just think that, you're putting your name on a ballot, you want to hold a seat, but it's a lot of work that goes into being an elected official. You have to decide to run. You have to get your campaign team together. You got to figure out, like, what is your platform, what you're running on, like, how are you going to really and truly help the people that you are going to be representing? So to anyone that put their name on the ballot, hats off to you. You are an incredible individual.
And people have plenty of time to keep thinking about it. The nominating or the deadline to file for any of these offices is April 1st. So we won't know who's going to be on the ballot for a while yet, but folks announcing now get a little bit of a leg up on it. But still, what about this idea that we don't gain much institutional memory because people don't run a second time, and now we have a couple of candidates who do? Am I right that often we just see a one and done?
Yeah. I mean, if I run for something and I spend $100,000 and I get 20% of the vote, I'm unlikely to do that again.
But do you have an advantage if you do it again from the name recognition the first time around? Are you parlaying that experience?
That's a good point.
I think it's speaking to hopefully a shift that we're starting to see in the Democratic Party, right? This tenacity, this fight back that, although, that first time we might not have reached the mark, we're going to dust ourselves off and keep trying again, because as we keep getting out there and we get that name recognition and people start to see us working in our communities and really kind of living the things that we are speaking about when we're running for these campaigns, that will draw people to us, draw people to the Democratic agenda, and hopefully bring about more voters. So kudos to anybody, again, throwing their hat in the ring, especially if you're doing it more than once, right? Because it's really showing this diligence and this commitment to the party's agenda, to the motto, to the line that even though they got me the first time, I'm not staying down. And I think that's just true to the spirits of Democrats these days, is that we're coming out swinging, we're going to keep fighting, and we're going to fight until we're victorious.
Joe Biden ran for president in 1988.
Yeah, he finally made it.
Yeah.
He's hung around long enough. So Nikita and Amber, both of you spoke to how difficult it is to run. It's all difficult to serve, but it's particularly difficult to run. What do we owe those candidates as just voters and members of the Democratic Party? What do we owe them to encourage them, convince them, anyone out there listening that thinks it might be something they would want to do, but is daunted at the prospect? What do we owe them as members of the party?
Well, I think, speaking personally for myself, as far as my opinion of it, I do believe that when we have somebody that is brave and courageous to throw their hat in the ring, right, the best thing we can do as voters is try to support them. If we find a candidate that has points that align with our values, really getting behind that person, whether it's voting, door knocking, phone banking, sometimes digging in our pockets and giving them $5, $10 or more to a campaign, right? Supporting them in ways that we can to help further and push that agenda, push that candidate so that they can reach more voters and get a little bit more recognition and a little bit more support is the best way I think we can support the candidates that we have in our local elections, just to kind of get them going, get the momentum built, and hopefully get them across the finish line.
I agree with that, and I have nothing to
John, you took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, Amber said it. That's what we need to do. get behind these individuals who are putting their name on the ballot and know that it's just more than putting your name on the ballot. So yes, everything Amber said, spot on 100%.
Is there anything that the party does for candidates officially as the York County Democratic Party? Again, not before a primary because we don't endorse, but after they've won their primary, what can the party do for them?
We can support them in regards to continuing to make phone calls on their behalf. We don't have a whole lot of money, so as far as financial, we're kind of hands are tied in that sense, but we can be the extra support system that they need to carry themselves on through to the finish line, as Amber stated. We have an array of talents that we can utilize and help, push that candidate to the finish line. And so we just ask anybody who is looking to run for an office, please reach out to us and see what type of support that we can offer you, and also answer any questions or point you in the direction of what it takes to be successful in winning your campaign. The most important thing is to know that it is a lot of hard work. This is not something that you come into with a light mind or just thinking that, hey, this is an easy walk. It's not. You have to go out and convince someone that they are worthy of your vote, because your vote matters. It's your voice. And so we're here to support in any way possible that we can. So again, we're not going to finance their campaign because we can't. We can't finance everybody. Look at all these people that's on the ballot or going to be on the upcoming ballot. We wish we could, but we can offer suggestions on how you can, and we can support you in those efforts. Yeah. But to actually fund is very difficult. We can't do that. And here with the YouTube show and podcast, the YCDP TV, even before the primaries, we will be happy to bring on anybody who is running officially declared for an office as a Democrat. We'll talk to you before the primary once you've declared. And I don't know if we'll set up debates. I don't know. Who knows? What kind of format we'll do. Maybe one-on-one. Maybe we'll, if we've got two candidates, maybe bring them on together and let them talk about things. I don't think we'd have contentious debates. I think we'd probably just have discussions like we're doing here. But this is a fairly new opportunity that we can offer to people to at least be able to reach out and let people know what you look like, what you sound like, what your ideas are. And then after you've won a primary, we're all in for you, and we'll have you on as often as you're willing to come talk to us. Unless you say every day, can't do that. All right, so the primary will be June 11th. There'll be a couple of weeks of early voting. All those details will be ironed out between now and June 11th. And in this case, you have to win more than 50% of the vote. John, correct me if I'm wrong. Yes. If you don't win 50%, if nobody wins 50%, there'll be a runoff between the top two. Yes. And that will be the end of June. And that's the one time when you have obligated yourself to take a party's ballot. If you take a Democratic ballot in the June 11th primary and there's a runoff for whatever number of offices there might be, you have to vote as a Democrat for that runoff. Yeah. You can't vote in one party's primary and the other party's runoff. Yep. And then that works action. And then, again, correct me if I'm wrong, in November, if you voted for a candidate in the June primary and it now comes November, you're required to vote for them in the general election. Am I right? Not at all. I would have failed your class. You would have labeled me the class clown. And did you have any class clowns? Oh, I had met class clowns. Sometimes I was one of them. All right. So that primary coming up, we'll do shows about that. We'll have candidates. Looking forward to that as time comes. But it's probably most of that's going to start happening in May because, as we know, no one's going to pay attention between now and then except for the folks that are getting ready to gear up their campaigns. We're going to do our best to get the word out. I think I'm going to go back to saying these, what are they called, kitchen meetings, these small intimate settings. And we're going to be at a lot of community events that's going to be coming up here pretty soon. And so that's going to be our posts and plans is to get out into the community to talk about these upcoming elections, and also in the meantime trying to register these 18-year-olds to vote, to become registered voters. So in reference to the York County Democratic Party, we're going to try to do our best to beef up and talk about the elections coming up, because as we stated in the beginning, the one thing that a lot of people said they didn't know about the primaries, but that's where education and conversation is going to need to take place in order for us to bring awareness to the community about these upcoming elections. Because like you say, everybody just focus on November, but we have to make sure that we are on top of things and keep moving forward talking about these elections.
And one thing I add, we were talking about registered voters, if you are going to be 18 before the general election, you can register when you're 17 and vote in the primary, even though you're 18 on primary day. So your voter eligibility is determined by the general election in November.
My birthday is in October, and so the year I couldn't vote until I was 21, but because back then only white men could vote, and he had to be 21.
Property requirement.
Yeah, but I had to own a house.
Pay your poll taxes.
Yep, and be able to prove that I could read and write. So yeah, you young whippersnappers, 17-year-old, but you'll be 18 before November. What is it? 5th this year, 7th, somewhere in there, whatever that Tuesday is. Vote now. Well, vote in June. You're allowed to. Your first election. So good for you. What was bringing to mind for me, Nikita, was the events that you're talking about, the ones that are going to be open for people to attend. How are people going to know about that?
I would say the one thing is social media. Look on social media. That's where a lot of people are nowadays, social media. A lot of people don't read the Herald. A lot of people don't have Corporium to watch the news. And a lot of the Charlotte news, they advertise about, the metropolitan Charlotte area stuff. And so, again, word of mouth, paying attention to social media, look on the York County Democratic Party page. We're going to try to post as much as we can when we know about it. And so basically it's just being out in the community, having conversations.
So we have a Facebook group and a Facebook page for York County Democratic Party. The Facebook group is private.
Yeah.
So when you show up there, we will vet you and make sure that you're not a stealth Republican. And but that's probably the one of the best places to learn about what's going on. I would also like to point out that we have on our website, we have two options. We have this thing called the calendar, and it will show you events that are coming up. And right now, I'm the one who sticks things on the calendar. Amber can put things on the calendar as well. And once you see something on the calendar, then you can click on that and get an idea of what it is. And there'll probably be a link to take you to some more details on it. So those are two good places, but learning about things, finding out about things, I always find out about them after they've happened. It's hard. Yeah. You have to engage yourself. So send stuff to us. We'll put it on the Facebook. Well, you can put it on the Facebook page of the group, and I'll scrape it from there and get it on our calendar. We really want you to know about these things, and it's really hard letting you know. Are we doing a newsletter at this point? I know John Kralevich did one. What's our status on that?
We're not. It's a work in progress. And I will say we're here on this open platform. I am stretched thin in that regards. And so I'm going to solicit anyone's help. If you want to help with the newsletter, you're more than welcome to. A lot of people call and ask me to do a lot of things. And so trying to say yes and especially representing from the York County Democratic Party, the team that we have, we are working very diligently to try to get information out. We haven't published a newsletter yet, but it is forthcoming. And I know a lot of people really enjoyed it, but with this past week, with the presidential primaries, there was a lot of behind the scenes things that go on and had to take place, that it was just difficult to sit down and create content for that. But now that we have that behind us, we're moving forward towards the county convention, but we'll get that information out here pretty soon.
You'd love to have some more volunteers helping you out with this stuff.
Of course.
And I'd like to point out, you have a full-time job, right?
Yes, I do. I have a full-time job, and I take care of my mom.
Okay. Amber, you're one of those volunteers. You dig in a lot.
Amber's great.
I try. I definitely try. But
She's great.
Again, you still have other obligations too outside of that. But yeah, you definitely try to fill in the gaps where you can.
Yep. And I'm happy to sit here and punch buttons and stuff. John, what the heck do you do now? You just sit back and be important?
Yeah, well, I retired from Winthrop in last May 2023 after teaching political science for 22 out of the last 28 years. I'm reading, I'm traveling, I'm hanging out, I'm doing volunteer work for the South Carolina Democratic Party and the York County Democratic Party. I'm sleeping late.
He's living the dream.
Yep. Okay, we need more people. There's a phone number and a email address on the website, democrat@yorkscdems.org. Email will get you there. And then that phone number, 803-327-4222. 803-327-4222. And somebody will get back to you. I believe it's Darlene Mansfield that collects all that stuff.
That is correct.
Another extremely hard worker in the party.
That she is.
All right. So I got one more topic and then one more bit of fun. We have a convention coming up. We don't know everything that's going to happen with a convention, but we know when it's going to be and we know where it's going to be. And what can you tell us now about what might happen there?
Well, the county convention is going to take place on March the 9th from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. We say that we're going to have it at Grace Lutheran, but we're still waiting on some information to secure that location. But that is our hopes to have it there. We'll know by the end of the week if we've fully secured that location or not. But then if we don't, we do have a location that we think is a more centralized location for York County Democrats to come to instead of coming all the way into Rock Hill. So we have a plan B, I will say. And I will let John Holder speak because he is actually our executive committee man. And so he's been working with the state party in that regards. But basically, all York County Democratic Party members are able to come to the county convention. The one thing that we have taken up is that we don't have precinct presidents anymore. Unfortunately, we did not have enough people to want to take on that responsibility of being the precinct presidents. And so I think out of 101 precincts, we may have only had roughly 35. Am I saying that correctly, John? We only had 35 precinct presidents. And so there are some precincts that are very active in York County, and we want to tell them to continue on with your efforts. Don't stop just because we don't have precinct presidents. You don't have to stop your efforts because what you're doing in your precinct is very helpful to the Democrats in your area. But we're going to come on that day to discuss the party, also to elect delegates for the state convention. That's going to be in May. So we're going to have delegates to go to the state party convention. And then if there are any concerns from the York County Democratic Party, that's an opportunity to get together some bylaws that we can have read at the state party level to see if we can get some things changed, corrected, or however you want to look at it. If you've never been to the state convention, you're in for a treat. I can truly say that. But John, go ahead, take it away.
If you want to be a delegate to the Democratic National Convention, which is where the president and vice president are officially nominated, that's in Chicago later this summer. You have to have voted in the primary last week, and you have to attend your county convention to be elected as a delegate to the state convention, and you have to attend your state convention. So it's you have to go to a lot of meetings. It's a lot of effort, but that's what you need to do if you want to be a national convention delegate.
If you're going to the national convention, is that on your own dime or does the party pay for you? Okay.
They sometimes come up with a little financial support, but mostly you're on your own.
They might buy you lunch. maybe.
I was a delegate to the 2000 convention. Al Gore did win the popular vote. And we were in a hotel in Los Angeles, and they provided us breakfast, and of course there are a lot of receptions and things, so you're not going to starve while you're out there, but you do have to pay for your own hotel.
So if you want to go to the national convention, you have to attend the state convention,
the county convention,
and the county convention.
Yeah.
Okay. So in other words, you got to show some enthusiasm.
So, Gary, that's why it's important to vote in the Democratic primary as opposed to voting in the Republican primary.
Okay, so you have to have voted in the primary as well. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Putting all those pieces together. At our convention, do I understand correctly, we will also be electing or railroading our county party leaders?
That is correct.
For example, this person. It's your chance to escape.
Well, I'm trying to find Amber. Yes, that is correct. Your chair, first vice chair, second and third vice chair is up for election as well.
Those typically, are they contested, or is it we're lucky to find one person who will grudgingly accept the job?
No, Gary, actually you do have some of these positions that are contested. Last year, I don't think we had the chair seat contested, but as far as the first vice chair, second vice chair, and third vice chair, yes, we did have some contested seats. And it was up to the Dems of York County to pick who they wanted to serve in those capacities. That's why it's very important to come out, because you're going to be deciding who's going to serve the York County Democratic Party.
Everybody who wins this year is a one-year term, and then we go to an odd-numbered years for 2-year terms. So it'll be 25, 27, 29.
That's making things the same for every county party in the state?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then too, I think it's great to have, you being able to serve a 2-year, because then that way, whomever is the party chair, whoever the executive committee team exists of, that gives you more weight in the game to help, lead your party in the direction, as well as to cultivate and find those individuals who will be willing to put their name on the ballot. That we can offer more support in that capacity by having those 2-year terms, as opposed to this year you have Nikita and next year you're going to have Amber.
Yeah, that would be okay. I was going to say, maybe we'll have, if we have folks that want to run for these offices and it's going to be contested, another opportunity is to talk to them on the podcast like this. But this podcast is public, and those offices are just inside the party. I don't know. Should we do that in public, or should we find a more private way to do it?
They're public offices.
Yeah. We'll see. The things people will talk about would be why they would want to be part of the leadership of the county party. I don't think any of that is be secret. So, yeah, maybe we'll get a chance to talk to people doing like that if we hear from folks that want to run for those offices. Nikita, are you going to re-up? Put her on the spot.
We have an election coming March the 9th.
We'll see. Okay. Amber, you're third vice chair?
Yes.
Are you going to go for another office?
I am thinking about it.
Okay. All right. Put you on the spot.
Yeah, Amber is great. And I will say, and let me just say this one thing about Amber. I may be putting her on the spot, but you have to toot people's horn. Give them their accolades, give them their flowers while they're able to enjoy. And I do remember Amber probably 3 or 4 years ago. Amber, has it been that long?
Probably, yeah. Just
about 3 or 4 years ago, and this young vibrant lady just pops up on the scene, and it was like, I want to do something. What can I do? And I said, wait, you realize what you're about to get into? Do you realize what you're about to embark on? Because I'm here to tell you, when you say that you want to actively be a part of the New York County Democratic Party, we will put you to work, and we will call upon you. And since day one, since she came, and I remember she said, I just picked up the phone and called John Krlovich. I just called Mr. John. And so, and from that day moving forward, she has not let down. Anytime we have a community event, Amber is there. Anytime we need some information printed, she's great with graphics. She's great with creating QR codes for us to make things easy as far as donations, signing up voters, registering people to vote, signing up volunteers. She has truly, truly done the work of being the third vice chair and more. She has the ability to lead this party in a positive direction. She's young. She can have the ability to pull in the young vote, and just seeing how she's come in and taken the bull by the horn, and she hasn't let up. And she was like, I'm not opposed to hard work. Give me the work. She's been asking for it. And so I want to say to you, Amber, thank you for stepping up and doing all that you have for the party. I've seen so much growth in you. And when she don't know, she's not afraid to ask the question. She's, I don't know. I just want to know. And that's one thing that I admire about her. She's eager to learn and to know what this party is all about. And so, Amber, as far as I go, I could see you doing well, leading the party.
I would say we don't want to elect Amber as chair of the party
just yet.
Not because she's not qualified, but because that would make her do all the work.
And I think Miss Nikita's doing such a wonderful job, right? Hitting her stride. If it's not broke, let's not fix it, right?
Yeah.
It's beautiful. But thank you for all those kind words, Miss Nikita.
Yeah.
I tell you, when you have strong leadership, it's a trickle-down effect, right? And it makes you want to work. It makes you want to learn. And I have been so blessed to be able to be with this dynamic group of people in the York County Democratic Party. And I tell you, one of my professors told me one time, you can learn from anybody. And I have learned so much from every single person on the York County Democratic Executive Committee and the people that I've come in contact with on the day-to-day with the party. So I definitely thank you. And anything that I've been able to contribute has definitely been a reflection of the leadership that I have been surrounded by in the county party. So thank you all. And I'm all about tooting everybody's horn. So thank you. Mr. Gary, you are awesome too. I just thought throw that in there too.
Thank you.
We've learned a lot from you.
Yeah.
We learned a lot.
Yeah, I'm just getting my feet wet here, but this is what I want to do. This podcasting stuff is what my expertise. Media is where I toot my horn. Okay, so March 9th, and details forthcoming. Our Facebook group and the website. There's a whole page on the website that will get filled in with what's going on. What has traditionally happened in the past at county conventions? Was that the last one? I sort of remember it. A lot of people talk.
We're going to talk about what direction we need to move the party in, and we need to now start being more strategic and intentional about what our actions are, and our support behind candidates that's on the ballot for the Democratic Party. Everyone that's coming out, be ready to roll your sleeves up and lace your boots and let's go to work, because there is work to be done. Everybody has a role. Everybody has a part to play. And everybody has a seat on the bus to move us forward in the direction that we want to go in, need to go in, and we shall go in.
I got one more thing. I don't know if you guys have anything else that you want to bring up before I play the last little bit of video that I've got.
I do want to talk about some events that are going on here locally, and I will get this information to you. Sure. I do see that you have one event that's going to take place this coming Saturday. February the 10th is the Emmett J. Scott Literary and Arts Festival, and that's going to take place at Emmett Scott Center from 11 to 4 p.m. It's free, and we're going to have a special guest, Elaine Brown, the former chairwoman of the Black Panther Party and granddaughter of Emmett Scott, which that building is named after. We do have on February the 10th as well, from 4 to 5:30 p.m., Black History Month Sickle Cell Awareness Forum. It's going to take place at the Solo Center, and that's located at 1071 Finley Road in Rock Hill. And we're going to have some very prominent people on the panel. Dr. Cynthia Player-Roddy, first African-American woman to enroll at Winthrop University, and first African-American woman to graduate. And we have Wade Young. He's a sickle cell warrior, and also the pastor of Solo Ministry, Pastor C.T. Kirk. Today, February the 7th, is National Black HIV Awareness. Theme of this year is Engage, Educate, Empower, uniting the two ends, HIV and AIDS in Black community. So we're spotlighting that. And then on February the 16th, Sweetheart Saves Lives, North Central Family Medicine. There's going to be a blood drive on February the 16th from 12 noon until 5 p.m. So if you want to come out and donate blood, you're more than welcome to do so. And that's located at 1131 Saluda Street.
There's plenty to do, and we'll get most of those on the calendar. We'll get all those on the calendar. Some of them are already there. We'll get the rest of them on the calendar if you need a reminder of all the what's, who's, and where's. One little last fun thing for those of you that caught Saturday Night Live last night. I'm going to play this and hope YouTube doesn't take us down. I don't think they will. I think this is fair use because we're going to see somebody who is near, if not necessarily dear, to our hearts here in South Carolina in the opening skit that they did on Saturday Night Live. So let's take a look at that if I can make it play.
Our next question comes from someone who describes herself as a concerned South Carolina voter.
Yes, hello. My question is, why won't you debate Nikki Haley?
Oh my God, it's her, the woman who was in charge of security on January 6th. It's Nancy Pelosi.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and it's actually for Ambassador Haley.
I was just curious, what would you say was the main cause of the Civil War? And do you think it starts with an S and ends with a lavery?
Yep, I probably should have said that the first time. And live from New York, it's Saturday night.
And on tape from Fort Mill, it's the YCDP TV YouTube show and podcast. I caught that out of the corner of my eye as it was playing last Saturday night. I wasn't paying real careful attention. And wait, is that the real Nikki Haley, or did they get somebody who really looks like her? And I actually had to look it up. It was the real Nikki Haley. And I think that she was an awesome, good sport for handling that last question the way she did.
Definitely.
And I think it may gain her 1 or 2 percentage points in some upcoming vote.
Well, let me put it this way. She is my choice for the Republican presidential nomination, given the available choices.
Strategically, and looking at head-to-head poll numbers, which were still too early to really get much meaningful out of them, she's got a better chance against Biden than Trump does. So strategically, wouldn't we rather have Trump?
I'm thinking big picture.
Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, if she loses, she's not going to try to overthrow the government.
And if she were to win, if she were to be nominated, and if she were to win, we would probably be. I mean, she's a hard right conservative. She's no moderate. Some of the folks in the media tend to play her up as being more moderate than Trump. She's pretty hard right, but she would be a president in the mold of previous Republican presidents who have not destroyed the country. So from that aspect, I can see the idea of she would be preferable.
Yeah, I mean, she's less dangerous.
Yeah.
The policy disagreement is one thing, but, Trump is another thing entirely.
Yep. So not the territory that we typically are going to get into here on the YCDP TV show, but every once in a while it rears its head and we have to pay a little bit of attention just because, well, that one was fun. All right, you guys, thank you very much for stopping by. We are the YCDP YouTube show and podcast. It's now an audio podcast. For those of you that might find it more convenient to carry around on your phone and listen to in your earbuds, we'd be right there in your head. Tune us in either way you can, and let everybody else know that we're here, because getting the word out is very hard. So we'd like to get lots more subscribers to the YouTube show, subscribers to the podcast, and viewers, and we will help you understand what's going on in politics here in York County, South Carolina, not Pennsylvania, South Carolina. Our guests, hardly guests, because this is your venue here. Nikita Jackson, the chair of the York County Democratic Party, for now. So it was always for now, but we got that vote coming up in March. Amber Pearson. I remember the Pearson part because Gary Pierce. What was the last?
Bowen.
Okay, and John Holder. Thank you for joining us here on the YCDP. I'm trying to figure out a way to say this and incorporate the title that flies in from the side. That this is the way I've been closing all the podcasts without having to record anything extra. This is the York County Democratic Party YCDP TV, YouTube show, and podcast, and we will all see you next time. Over and out.